very much. Just on top. Oh, I thought I had it on. Sorry, that's better. All right. You know, I have presented in lecture series before, but always as an opportunity to introduce the entrepreneurship program, the major, the various opportunities that we have. And I've never had an opportunity to present my research, and that's a fun alternative. We sat in a Center for Entrepreneurship Leadership meeting some time ago, and someone raised the question, maybe the students would like to learn something not just about startups and their founders, but also something about what faculty do, about some of the ways that we're trying to push the boundaries of our knowledge of the field of entrepreneurship. I hope that you would say yes to that. I'm not sure. If I'm in a social context, like a ward party or something like that, and someone says, Nile, tell me about your research, I'd like to know more. My wife says, if he starts, I'm leaving. So I've become really sensitive to whether or not research is interesting to anybody but me. But it's very interesting to me. I have a lot of excitement for the kinds of things I get to do. I work on startups, I teach startups, and I do research on startups and innovation. And so I have great passion for it. I have a lot of excitement about it. And want to share with you a few thoughts here. I really prefer not to lecture, so if you have questions, please ask them. I would rather spend time clarifying. At the same time, I do have some thoughts I want to get through. I have several children that would be your age. Several of them are here at BYU right now. Two of them plus two of their friends are all taking American Heritage at the same time. How was your experience in American Heritage? 2 thumbs up? I see a couple of thumbs down. As they're talking about it, it really shaped. I was wrestling with what should I show you, and as they've been wrestling with these really fundamental questions in American Heritage about what is capitalism, what is economics, how do we understand what is this thing America? A big share of it is our economic underpinnings. And I thought I would share with you some research that I am doing. It's not yet published, but work that's underway, talking about how the question of entrepreneurship fits into this bigger question of capitalism, free enterprise, and the better good, the greater good of a country. And so what I've titled the presentation today is, when is entrepreneurship good for society? Given what you've heard right now, so far this semester, I think you would hear that the answer is always, right? That entrepreneurship is always good for society. True? This is a good thing. You've never seen a counter-argument presented, I think. True? Not getting many responses. You're here? Too late in the day? I don't know. I may need to have you stand up. So how many of you have had American Heritage or are taking it now? Okay, wow, not that many actually. How many of you have had Econ 110? How many of you have not had American Heritage or Econ 110? Okay, just a few, good. All right, I may have those of you who just raise your hand lean over and get some clarification, because I may skip over a few things. Here's what an economist would say. An economist would say, and this is the version of economics that you learned, particularly in Econ 110, that the single best thing that we can do for society is to create conditions of perfect competition. Because if we create conditions of perfect competition, you will get what you want at the lowest possible price. Right? Sounds familiar. And wouldn't you rather get what you want at the lowest possible price? It's not very controversial, right? Now, the question is whether under perfect competition you will actually get what you want. But as an entrepreneurship scholar, as a management scholar, I stand in front of students all the time and say to them, I am going to help you create and exploit conditions of imperfect competition so that you can be really profitable. Can you hear how sleazy that is? Right? You think about it. Since Adam Smith, we've been saying that conditions of perfect competition will make society better off. And I'm saying I want to help you create imperfect competition so that you can be profitable. Guess what Adam Smith would say about that? What's that? That I'm a jerk? Well, yeah, that I'm teaching it. But what about the people who do it? What would he say about them? That they're jerks. He actually used stronger language. Okay, here's the argument. So here's the core argument. And you've seen this, right? Simple supply and demand kinds of things. If the supply curve is represented by the marginal cost curve, which it is in perfect competition, then what will happen is that the price will get competed around. Entry will happen. It'll shift the marginal cost curve around. My PhD's in economics, right? Sorry. But it'll shift the supply curve around until it hits at the right spot the demand curve, and then price gets set, quantity gets set, and this price is equal to firms' cost, including their opportunity cost, not accounting cost, but opportunity cost. But price will be equal to cost. It's the lowest possible cost we can get, and customers will gain all of this thing here that's called consumer surplus. This is the benefit to society, because if there's a customer right here and they're willing to pay this much and they only have to pay this much, that was gain to them, right? All of that is benefit that they internalize. When a customer willing to pay this much pays this much, they gain that much surplus in their personal value. That is huge. It's very powerful. It makes the U.S. The economic juggernaut that it is in our society. However, I stand in front of you and say, I want you to build something that is rare and scarce, that solves customer needs. I completely agree, not that focuses on earning money, but that focuses on solving customer problems. But if you solve a customer problem well, then customers will pay you well to solve it. And you're going to be able to set your price higher, effectively at the monopoly level, at least over the little segment of customers who absolutely adore what it is you're going to do for them. And you're going to take out of that consumer surplus that used to exist, you're going to take that chunk of it. What's left to customers? They still get this much, but this much is called deadweight loss because everybody loses. Society loses all of this, and customers lose this part because it goes to you. Does that sound selfish to you? Am I making you uncomfortable? If I'm not, you're not listening because I'm trying to make you uncomfortable. Apologies, I've been sick all weekend and my voice is a little rough still. What you learn in Econ 110 and what you learn in American Heritage would say that what you're learning in here has moral problems, okay? And I'm asking this really fundamental question. Is it a moral problem? I'm trained as an economist. I'm trained to believe this stuff about the benefits of perfect competition. And I stood in front of a class my very first time. I'd actually never even taken a management class. Standing in front of a strategic management class and teaching these things and thinking, I can just feel the horns growing out of my head. This is evil. I'm teaching my students how to be evil. Can I spend a career doing this? I've got to understand this more deeply. Here's how Adam Smith understood it. He was talking about managers. He's talking about entrepreneurs. In particular, he says, they have generally an interest to deceive and even oppress the public, and have upon many occasions both deceived and oppressed it. Number one, they want to deceive and oppress the public, and number two, they succeed. Thank you. Who is Adam Smith? So Adam Smith wrote, among other things, so in 1776, Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. That is the book that first laid out the principles that we consider the basics of modern economics, including concepts of supply and demand. So he's a Scottish scholar working in Scotland, and is considered the father of modern economics. Okay, all right, and again, 1776, right? This is old stuff. And so when we talk economics and we quote Adam Smith, it's like quoting Moses, right? I mean, it's the old original stuff, all right? And a really remarkable statement about huge discomfort with the people who are doing what we're urging you to do. They have an interest to deceive and oppress and have successfully done it. And he goes on to talk about how we should stop them. There's a French author and a philosopher who is quoted to say, behind every great fortune is a great crime. An even stronger statement of the kind of thing that Adam Smith was trying to say. If you see somebody rich, you're simultaneously seeing someone who is a criminal. Now, that's not to mean they broke laws to become rich. What is it meaning? What's the crime that he is accusing them of? Please. Yeah, well, and in particular, exploiting customers, right? In Adam Smith's kind of language, deceive and oppress the public. And if you see them succeed, then Balzac would say, that was a crime. To deceive and oppress the public. All right, does that make anybody uncomfortable? Sure made me uncomfortable. What am I going to do about it? This is actually attributed to him. What he really said is, the secret of a great fortune for which you are at a loss to account is a crime that has never been found out because it was properly executed. Meaning, translation, meaning that if you see a fortune and you can't make sense of it, if you see wealth that isn't created by something with sense, then with value creation, then you should worry about it. So let's skip that one. Let's come back to this. Oh boy, we need to hurry. There is an assumption that was made in your Econ 110 class and in your American Heritage class that you were never told about. And it is this assumption that all customers in the market want the same thing. Okay? So if we were to build this graph and we were to say, here are all the possible things that people could want, then perfect competition is built with the knowledge, many economists would say, with the certainty, many economists would say, that everybody wants the same thing. What do you think about that assumption? You would rather get a lower price for the things you want, right? But you look around this room and do we want the same things? Some of you wear athletic shoes. Some of you wear hiking and outdoor shoes. Some of you wear cowboy boots. Some of you wear dancing shoes. Some of you wear a wide variety of things. Not because alternatives aren't available, but because alternatives are available and you're alternative. Right? We are really different, heterogeneous people, and it's wonderful. We're diverse and we disagree. How many of you are willing to pay, well, think of it this way. How many of you would love to see things at cost? That every producer set things at their cost? Good. That was a lot of you not raising your hand. So you're good paying more, right? The rest of you, come see me later. I've got things to sell you. How many of you would be willing to exchange the uniqueness of the products you buy? Think shoes. How many of you would be willing to get to pay 75% off every time guaranteed, and the only thing you'd have to give up is that every pair of shoes in the world looks exactly the same. Would you make that trade? For most of us, that's a horrible trade. And guess what? You are one of the most income-deprived populations in Utah County. Now, I get that relatively speaking, BYU students are blessed and richly blessed, and that mostly you have opportunity. But even the most income-deprived of us are still usually willing to pay a premium for the things that match our preferences. And that doesn't seem surprising at all, does it? That just seems natural. Please.
So I think that whole metaphor was created with price or willing to sacrifice. I think it's just this realm of if we allow society to adopt people like that, picking up creativity to keep people in the game,
Good.
then we are not profitable in that sense. We don't progress. We don't
Good.
go with ideas.
So the statement is that if we were, and this is kind of what my research is about, because we have a lot of people out there saying we need conditions of perfect competition. We need this to happen to make society a better place. And I'm saying that if we try to create products for uniform customers and deliver them to non-uniform customers, the world will be a worse place. And if we eliminate creativity and the search for serving heterogeneous customers whose needs are not met, will make the world a worse place. It's not utopia. It's a
I think that another interesting point is when you eliminate that, you also eliminate empathy.
good.
You're not thinking about the end user anymore. You think
Good.
of everybody else completely equal, and then your empathy.
Good. Yeah, empathy gets eliminated in that context. Now, if the world really looks like this and everybody wants the same thing, then that is empathy, right? But if the world looks differently, then that's not empathy at all, okay? So here's what this graph is meant to say. Same graph, wide diversity of things that people want. What does this dimension of the graph mean? Let me give a quick clarification. Suppose, for example, that we were talking about cell phones, okay? What are some of the dimensions that you pay attention to when you make a decision about what cell phone you want? Not the one you buy, but the one you want. What, the size, the physical dimensions, good. Some people want bigger, some people want smaller, yeah. What else? The brand. Why brand? Good, absolutely. There was a time, it's not so much anymore, but just having those white earbuds was a social status. Yeah, please.
Is it not Apple? If that's not Apple, then
If it's not Apple, then it's not acceptable. Yeah.
acceptable is not Apple.
Oh, you flip it, okay.
Apple, and it's not Apple.
Yeah, and for others, it would be the opposite. True? Yeah? And that's valid. No, I look, people have preferences, and those preferences are valid, right? I'm not going to judge the preferences. What else? What else do you care about? That's not much. Is that really it? What's that? Good, I care about memory, storage capacity. I care about screen resolution. I care about camera resolution. I care about the number of apps that are available. I care about, well, right? You can see lots and lots of dimensions. Good, user interfaces, particularly the systemic perspective, right? So one is how I interact with my phone personally. The other is how I interact with my phone in the system kind of way, meaning where do I get software? Where do I communicate with others, and what kinds of systemic relationships do I build? All of those are dimensions. This line is an index of all those things. So for example, my camera could have anything, anywhere from 1 pixel to 1 trillion pixels, okay? And I could choose, and I could say, look, I need a camera that has this many pixels, and I need a screen that has this size, and this much memory, and this much of a microprocessor, and on and on and on. And I'm going to reduce all of those choices down to an index and say, at that particular specification of all those parameters, there are that many customers who want exactly that phone. Does that picture make sense? The wide array of things people want, how many people there are. Okay? Most innovation is about figuring out a way to climb that mountain higher. What I'm particularly interested in, and by the way, can you see, if customer preferences were just that, then what should we bring to the market? If we brought this solution instead, how would we do? If anybody else brought this solution, they would win, right? We would lose in the marketplace. So automatically, all the firms are going to line up here, and since all the firms are undifferentiated and the customers are undifferentiated, then the products will be undifferentiated and price will go to cost, and utopia has occurred. But if the world looks like that, then I'm going to get a solution here, and I'm going to get a solution here, and I've drawn this green market as the space where we know who these customers are, and we know, relatively speaking, what they want. What I particularly am interested in as a scholar and as an entrepreneur and as a teacher is, what about this other group of customers over here that we haven't quite even recognized yet? What about this group of customers that we don't know what they look like, we don't know what they're asking for, we don't know what they want? This group of customers is a group of customers whose needs have never been met because they've never been recognized. And if all the products look like this in the world, if all the products are lined up here on the middle of the distribution of the known customers, then what's happening to this group of customers? They're ignored. They're suffering a loss. Does that make sense? A social loss, an economic loss. In my view, these are the customers who are being oppressed by the firms who are behaving in a perfectly competitive way. Okay? So, boy, sorry, I was about to quote, do you know the movie A Beautiful Mind? See, I quote that, and you're already so young that probably doesn't resonate. In A Beautiful Mind, John Nash says, Adam Smith needs revision. In this light, here's another context where Adam Smith needs revision. If everybody wants the same thing, Adam Smith is spot on. But if everyone does not want the same thing, Adam Smith is wrong. And everyone does not want the same thing. So heterogeneous customers who want different things, are likely to be better off to pay a large premium to the company that solves their problem well, even if they have to pay a monopoly price for it, compared to the product that's available to them that's really, really cheap, but doesn't solve their problems, doesn't solve their needs. If we've got customers whose needs are unsolved, and it doesn't matter to them, if their needs are genuinely not solved, it doesn't matter to them how cheap the product is that doesn't solve their need. Right? That's just irrelevant. The question is, how do we solve their need? For them, the oppression happens because the market isn't serving them. Sure. Well, okay. Yeah, you can name any innovation and we can do this, right? So tell me one. You've been hearing speakers all along. Tell me, based on a speaker, an innovation that you've talked about recently in this class. I mean, I can throw out some other examples, but please. Yeah. Right. So it's enterprise level, internet VoIP type phone system. Okay. Now, before that, enterprise phone systems you bought from large carriers who were mostly landline type carriers, And enterprise phone systems were really, really expensive, right? Any idea what Microsoft pays for their enterprise phone system? I mean, it would be tens of millions of dollars a year, right? Could be, yeah. I mean, it would be an astronomical number. And John brings along an opportunity to say to companies, look, you're going to give up a bit, right? But I'm going to bring you an opportunity to do this through internet and voice over internet protocols, which are relatively cheap. Okay? And you're going to buy your own phones, and you're going to, there'll be some latency issues. And in the early days of VoIP, the calls themselves weren't very good, but it's going to be cheap. Okay? Now, what does that mean to a startup with 10 employees? That means all the difference. When they couldn't afford an enterprise phone system, they were, they're not over here. They're not the I don't know, you name it, all the big companies of the world who are just saying, it's just part of the cost of doing business, whatever. We can spread it over a lot of people. They're over here saying, I need a phone that is cheap, that'll get calls in and take care of it and so on. And John comes along and says, okay, I'll give that to you. The idea that we could cut the cost from $1,000 per month per year, or well, say $1,000 per year per user from enterprise to $500 per year per user through perfect competition does no good for the company that can only afford $10 per month per user. And John came along and said, let me give you that. That customer suddenly had an option. That customer suddenly had a product in the market where they didn't have one before. What are they willing to pay for it? Relative to cost, probably a lot. If John's cost is 10 cents and he charges them $10, and they're willing to pay $10, is that exploitation? What do you think? He just changed their lives. He just made their lives, he went from 0 options to 1. That is an enormous transformation. And if they're willing to pay that, why wouldn't John say yes to accepting that? All right, let me suggest, here's the challenge in getting there. Has anyone ever been, do you know where this is? It is China. Do you know where? Bonus points for if you can name the region. It's a place called Guilin. And it's amazing. It's got these mountains there. They're just so iconic. They just come up and they're domed and they're almost perfect in their shape. And they're really amazing. If I gave you the job, climb the tallest peak in Guilin, could you do it? Say by the end of 2017, could you get to the top of the tallest peak in Guilin? Sure. How would you do it? You start walking? I'd fly to Shenzhen first, personally. But then, what? Say you're in Shenzhen. To where? Take a helicopter to the top of what peak? Which one? Which one? Okay, the one that's tallest. But which one? You don't know right now, do you? Could you find out? You'd Google it. How long would it take? It would. Yeah, I don't know exactly how long it would take you to sort among which of the peaks and what but you could get the GPS location, the GPS coordinates of the tallest peak in Guilin fast, right? Okay. Now suppose the Guilin looked like that. You know there are peaks in there, but you don't know where they are and you don't know how tall they are. And now I say, climb the tallest peak. Now what do you say? How would you go about it now? Good. But if you go in there without the internet, say you're standing on the edge of this river, okay, there's a river that feeds right along the edge of it, and you're going to walk in there, how do you ensure that you're on the tall one? Good, because they probably have a pretty good sense, right? Okay, ask the locals. What else would you do? Okay, good. Whatever maps exist, you're going to use, right? What else? Please. Good. Find someone who's been in there at least, right? If not, I mean, they may not know whether or not it's the tallest, but get someone who's been close. Yeah. Good. Wait till the fog clears. Here's the problem. If someone else is on top of the peak before the fog clears, there may not be room for you there. Right? There's the dilemma if you wait. Let me come back to this one. What you're suggesting is wait until I know where the mountain is and how tall it is, and then compete with others to climb it. And I'm urging you something that I call entrepreneurial innovation, which is find a peak nobody knows exists. Find a customer who has a need that nobody's discovered yet and solve it for them. And that is a peak hidden in fog today, and you've got to clear that fog. It's the difference between climbing the best route the fastest and actually finding something to find a route on. It's a really different thing. I'm not disparaging climbing the peak. I'm not disparaging at all the kind of entrepreneurship that says, I can do this faster or better than others. I'm just particularly interested as a scholar and as an entrepreneur about getting into the mists, the darkness, the uncertainty, and finding customers whose needs are previously completely unknown and solving them. And I may not get to the top of the peak. In fact, I might sell it to someone who's better at climbing because I'm better at discovering. And the people who are better at discovering are often not best at climbing, and the people who are best at climbing are often not best at discovering. So let them separate and let them do their jobs. Oh, absolutely. If I'm good at discovering and I've found those customers and I've built them a solution that is good, they're going to start paying me a big premium for it. And somebody who's not good at discovery but is really good at climbing, they're going to say, your margins are way better than my margins. I'm offering you 5x on your revenues for your company. Is it a sellout if I'm an entrepreneur and I sell the company before it's completely reached its commercial outcome? I don't think so. Because as an entrepreneur, my best skill is probably my discovery skills. And there are people who get trained inside this building all over the place who are probably better at the climbing skills. And I'm happy to let them climb. Now, there are people in the world who are good at both, right? That, for example, is what, so Bill Gates, I don't know, wide variety of the technology group were both the discoverers and the climbers. But it's actually the exception, not the rule. So let me, this is just a quick representation, a theoretical representation of the same thing. So let me just show you a couple of results from research. So this is actually a large simulation model. It's known as a formal model. I build markets where I build customer segments and put firms into those segments and say, customers, who do you want to buy from and why? How much are you willing to pay? And then ask how much consumer surplus, how much surplus goes to customers, and how much profit goes to the firms. And here's what happens. If in context of unrestricted choice, as long as the customers are allowed to choose and there aren't any restrictions placed on them, then, sorry, this is a bit hard to read, I apologize for that, but if you read the paper, then you'd have it all down, right? Anybody want to, by the way? Yeah. My kids don't want to either. So I've got two segments, right? I drew those two pictures. I've got two segments. The welfare, the economic welfare, the social value for that segment that's already in the market, they are this group. As segment 2 begins to slide further and further away, I'm going to make customers more and more and more heterogeneous. And then here's the value of segment of the customers who are in segment 2. And here's the total. So if I bring a product, if I find that second mountain, here's the crux of it. If I find that second mountain and I serve that second mountain and I make a lot of profit doing it, consumer surplus, the welfare in the market went from here to here. It went from between 5.5% to 12%. I made the world 12% better off by solving that other group's problem. If the size of segment 2 gets bigger and bigger, I create more and more value. If segment 2 is willing to pay more and more, I make the world that much better. Here's the short of it. When I, as an entrepreneur, solve an unmet customer need because there are customers who are different and their needs are not being met, and that's true at this very moment. Millions of customers' needs are not being met. When I see those needs and solve those needs, I make the world a better place, and I make myself profitable at the same time. That is a rare and beautiful opportunity, and I think that's the essence of entrepreneurship. We are not oppressing the needy. We are serving the needy's needs and earning the profitability that comes from it at the same time. It's an exciting world. Go be great entrepreneurs. Find the unmet needs, solve the unmet needs, and come back and tell us your story because we're excited to hear it. Thanks, everyone.